I'm going to tell you what we're going to do the first week. If I'm in office, every legislator in Tennessee is going to come to the residence and we're going to have a big old meal. And everybody better bring their favorite thing that they eat. And they're going to bring their partners and their spouses and their kids. And we're going to sit, and you're going to sit with somebody who's on the opposite aisle from you. And we're going to start to humanize each other, because we cannot write effective legislation together if the only time that we talk is in the halls of a debate circle. We have to, we have to start to humanize one another, or we'll never be able to serve the people of the state.
Hey guys, on this episode, we're breaking our own rules. We're talking politics. I know that's hard to believe, but we couldn't resist a conversation with gubernatorial candidate for the state of Tennessee, Lauren Pinkston. An off-limits topic, but with someone who's overcoming obstacles to do something extraordinary. And that's something we love to talk about on The Kingdom Effect. Hey guys, welcome to the Kingdom Effect podcast. This is Kevin E. Beasley again. And alongside on the other side of the screen is my good friend and podcast partner, Glenn Buckshot Buckley. What's up, Glenn?
Man, not much, dude. What's the E stand for?
Well, I don't tell many people that. I just use the initial, but it stands for Edmund.
Edmund.
And yeah. And I
That's
say
old school.
E, it is old school. I say E because if you do kevinbeasley.com, you get this really famous photographer, and his specialty is underwater pregnancy photographs. It's the weirdest thing. And he is world famous. A lot of his pictures end up in New York, different kind of galleries. But that's his thing. kevinbeasley.com is an underwater pregnancy photographer. So that's why I always say Kevin E. Beasley. Just saying, would you be excited about your wife, Ginger, if she was pregnant, getting pictures, underwater pregnancy pictures?
That's really hard for me to imagine, just because I know that's something she would never do. But I do remember, when two of my kids were born, I was like behind the doctor with my catcher's mitt. I was just fascinated. But my wife would never in a million years go for that now. But I just can't imagine, which I've never given birth, but is giving birth in the water better, easier?
I don't know. Maybe we'll ask Lauren when she comes on, since she's a female.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's not the top bullet point of conversation we want to have today. But man, what's the most interesting thing you're working on right now?
Well, on the private side, I've got several homicide cases going on right now. And then on the trafficking side, I've got a few things going in Nashville. We're fixing to actually train a bunch of people in Nashville that are wanting to get plugged in and involved.
I was thinking the other day, if we turn this thing into a true crime podcast, we would probably quadruple our listenership, because everybody loves true crime. What would a faith-based true crime podcast, how would that play out?
I think it'd be very interesting, because a lot of people don't put true crime and faith in the same sentence. And so I think it would be something new and fresh, and we might even get a Netflix show out of it. I don't know.
That's funny. It would be interesting. Well, guys, thanks for being with us. I'm super excited to bring a good friend of mine on today. And man, every time I talk to her, she's just kind of deeper down the rabbit hole of taking on challenges in her life. So I met with her a few months ago, and we had a great conversation. And I just wanted her story to just have an opportunity to be told here on the Kingdom Effect, where we talk about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And this is Lauren has been an amazing person to watch over the years. I've known her for probably 6 or 7 years, and she just, again, anytime Jesus taps her on the shoulder and says, "I need you to do this," she says, "Here I am. Yes, sir. Here I am, Lord, send me." So Lauren's married with 4 children. She is a resident of Columbia, Tennessee, just south of where I live. 7th generation Tennessean. This is the interesting part, running as an independent in the Tennessee gubernatorial race. She's founded, run, consulted numerous faith-based nonprofits, served in the university classroom and on the mission field. So she's got a lot of great stories to tell. This is one of the when I was just kind of Googling around, this is one of my favorite little phrases or statements, Lauren. It says, she has a stubborn hope for what she calls the mindful middle block of American voters and considers it an act of righteous justice to disrupt the current political landscape with competitive, intelligent, and practical ideas that will preserve our democracy and protect our future. So I don't know who wrote that, but it's amazing. Y'all make welcome Lauren Pinkston. Hey, Lauren, what's up?
Oh, I need to find that person that wrote that. And if that was me, I'm proud of those words. I'm going to pull that back out, and it just is an honor to be with you guys. Two men that I have respected for so long, and I'm so grateful for the space that you guys make for the right kind of conversations and the conversations that really inspire all of our communities to be better. So thank you. It's really an honor to be with you.
Oh, thanks, man. Great to have you. Hey, I got a question for you before we get serious. Tell me about this word gubernatorial. Where did that come from? It doesn't even hardly sound like governor.
We have laughed on the campaign team. Do we pronounce it gubernatorial? Is it gubernatorial? It's obviously spelled like goober, but there's a lot of goobers that are governors right now, so
That's
it's
awesome.
probably appropriate, and we're going to try to change that. So
that's an interesting.
I have a question for you guys. How many signatures do I need on a petition to be able to get on your true crime podcast? Because I have joked and said that if this race, if we don't win in November, which I'm doing everything I can to make sure we do, but if we don't win in November, there's a real area to tap into of millennial women for a true crime podcast. I think we could solve a lot of crimes together.
That's awesome. I was actually thinking that since we're going to talk a little bit about politics today, we're actually inching our way closer to true crime, right?
Oh.
based on the people that are in office right now, right?
You are so right. You are so right. And I often wonder what I've gotten myself into, but for now, I am getting to talk to the best people in Tennessee every day and having the time of my life, because the people who are drawn to this campaign are the people who have zero interest in that 15% of, just ish on either side.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about background. Tell us, I know you said you're seventh generation Tennessean, but what is it that must have transpired in a young girl's life to develop her into a person that would be willing to take on the kind of challenges that you've taken on? And then that would be another great kind of segue into what have you done? What have you tackled over the years that have been the most exciting projects that you're proud of?
There's actually a direct line. The question that you just asked makes me think about my third birthday, where apparently my aunt manifested this over my life, because she looked at my mom and she said, I don't know if she's going to be a missionary or if she's going to dance on tabletops naked, but she's going to do something really extreme. And ironically, I ended up as a missionary to women who dance on tabletops naked. So that's been a really incredible journey of always being eager to leave rural Tennessee. I wanted to get out. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to adventure. I've got 4 kids. They were born on 3 continents. I got to sit at a desk at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. I got to pursue a PhD in international development. I got to start businesses with survivors of complex traumas and sit in the room with some of the most resilient, incredible people that this world has ever known. And wow, I was so happy working overseas. And when I realized that we were being moved back to the US, I begged God to take me anywhere but to Tennessee. I didn't know how to come back. I felt like a square peg in a round hole, as they say. And I just thought, how am I going to find a community again? I don't know that I fit in. And it was during a prayer that the Lord almost audibly said to me, like, Lauren, it's so cute that you want to have a flashy ministry, but if you haven't learned to love the people that you come from, you haven't learned to love at all. That has been this burden on my life for the last 6-7 years of getting to know the place that did raise me, getting to learn how to unify myself back with the state and the people who made me who I am, and to appreciate that, and then to be back here to serve those individuals that I had worked so hard to separate myself from. It's been incredibly humbling and truly healing for me in so many ways. And now there's no greater honor than to seek to serve them in office.
So tell me about, Lauren, one of those pivotal moments where you felt like we always say on this podcast, where you felt like the Lord just tapped you on the shoulder and said, follow me. Would that, like when you're thinking back, are some of those most pivotal moments early in your life, or have they just kind of been progressive throughout the years?
There were always times as a kid, I can remember being about 5 years old and looking at a National Geographic magazine during a massive drought in the Horn of Africa and feeling, I felt so uncomfortable looking at the things that I had and knowing that there were people in the world that didn't have those things, and it felt so unjust to me. So was just really uncomfortable with the privilege and the wealth that I had, and was mixed with a deep faith. Even as a child, I remember watching. I was such a nerd, such a weird kid, such a weird kid. But remember watching, televangelists on TV promising to heal people if they gave a certain amount of money, and I felt again just this righteous indignation that people were being lied to, and that is so wrong. Why are they allowing this on TV? How could they let this message get out? And that has continued to follow me, right? Whether that was in the classroom, whether that was in my studies, whether that was taking me all the way abroad to work with Christians who had been in prison, with individuals who had been tricked for work, whether that was even with my own family as an adoptive mom. And now the greatest injustice that I see every day is the injustice that says you have to be an extremist in order to be represented in government. And so that's the thread that has been woven through all of those moments of my life.
So good. Do you think that is like, we have Psalm 139, if you're looking at scripture, that says he knit us together in our mother's womb. And then I always point forward to Ephesians 2:10 that says, he pre-planned basically good works for us to do. I guess you could almost ask a nurture or nature question, right? Was that knit together in your mother's womb, or do you think that's something that you saw and experienced that developed into that kind of passion?
No, it's definitely both. I mean, we are a product of the experiences that we've had and the places that we come from, but there is something that is supernatural about the way that we're created and about the parts of God that he's decided to put inside of us. I do find that supernatural. I find that incredibly beautiful, because even now I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and my siblings and I had we grew up in the same home, but we have all found different paths. And this is a funny story I can share with you, but do you guys talk about the Enneagram much on this podcast?
Not a lot, but we probably
You're
it a
familiar?
couple times,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, it revolutionized my marriage, because before then, my husband and I, who we are so different, and if this is a theological podcast, so we can talk about, I'm more Pauline and he's more Petrine in our discipleship style. So I love to get people in the room, and he loves to walk with them after they're in the room. But we were working overseas. We're in Southeast Asia, and we've been there about 6-7 months, and I am making it a habit of driving through the red light district and I just want to know where the darkest parts of the city are. And I come home and I say, Gavin, we are not doing anything. We have this beautiful home. There are not people sleeping on our couches. We could be serving food out of our living room. And he goes, Lauren, I moved to Laos. I think I freaking did something. And I said, do you even love Jesus? And at that point, he was over it, right? Like culture shock is hitting, and he, in his good Enneagram 9 self, which I didn't know at the time, just walked out of the room. Well, I'm an Enneagram 8, and conflict is connection for me, and he was running away. So I follow him into the bedroom, and I say, I can't believe that you would just walk away from me. I said, sometimes I just want to light a fire under your butt. And he goes, Lauren, I'm too busy putting out all the fires you've started. And that was such a good comeback. I'm so impressed with that. But before we had really the language around who we were and what made us to be our unique gift to the kingdom, I think we were comparing each other to one another. And I was trying to make myself more like him, and he was trying to make himself more like me, and it was not working. And finally, we unlocked that magic of, everyone has the opportunity to carry the image of God in a different way into the world. And we all have a responsibility to the world that is different. And I think that's really beautiful.
Oh man, that's so good. Yeah, we, do a lot of counseling and marriage counseling, and that's something that's so common that you find those, polar opposite personalities are the ones that tend to conflict, even in my own marriage. But it's interesting for you that you carry the more aggressive side of the equation, which typically the man would carry. And
Hmm.
that's something I was interested in asking you about was how, like you've taken a bold step. So you're a younger female independent candidate on a big stage, right? So
Hmm.
that is multiple forms of underdog. So I was curious, but you've never backed down from that, right? So how does that feel to you? Are there times where you just get punched in the gut and you're like, what am I doing? Or has the Lord just given you confidence to just continue to plow forward?
I have always had an unusually high level of confidence. And I do think self-efficacy is a powerful thing, but I will tell you that I tried to do everything else but run this race, and I tried to do everything else but step into a moment like this. I begged God for years to make me good at baking sourdough, and He refused. Like even through COVID, I never made any kind of bread. It actually makes my blood pressure go up more to bake a cake than it does
Mm,
to run for governor. So I tried really hard to be this Southern, quiet, meek woman. And no matter where I went, I couldn't help but ask questions and to see systems that were broken and that needed to be fixed. And I was raised in a very conservative church, a church where women don't have the authority to speak or to preach or to teach. That was a constant rub for me, and
mm,
something that I really spent about 8 months when there was, I guess I only had one child at the time. And I called my mentor, Dottie, in Texas. And I said, Dottie, I am suffocating over here on the mission field. All the women around me are like homeschooling their kids and baking bread. And I don't like, none of that feels right to me. And she said, Lauren, you've got to stop being friends with the American missionaries because they're all stuck in the 50s. She said, you need
mm.
to go find a German woman and be your best friend. And then she said, and don't call me back until you've gone to scripture and you have read every account of every woman that you can find. Then you come back and tell me what you've learned. And that practice of sitting in stories of women in scripture over and for days, sometimes in each story, probably the story of Abigail was the most impactful one for me. But if you guys remember the story of Abigail, she's got an idiot husband who is trying to fight David and make him out to be this terrible guy. David's got his mighty men. They're hungry. They've been out in the wilderness, and they come in and they're arguing. And Abigail says, "We are all going to die if somebody doesn't step in." And so she gets all of her servants together, and they bake these fig cakes and they load their donkeys down with food. And she goes after her husband is intoxicated in the tent, and she goes and meets David on the side of the mountain, and she identifies herself as his servant, kneels down before him, and starts to feed him and his men. And in that moment, I realized that as a woman, I don't have to be the best man in the room.
Mm,
I just have to be an obedient woman in the room. And
mm,
sometimes that means that I can bring something that a man cannot bring.
mm,
And that day, Abigail saved her entire village by the actions that she took and the decision that she made to step in and to defy her husband and his authority, and she saved her people, and then she became the queen. So
mm.
I those moments are there in scripture, and I love talking with women about those moments because so often we don't have women who are speaking that kind of power and authority over us in the things that God has put in us.
Yeah, before we got started here, I asked you how you're doing, and you just said basically I'm having the time of my life, and it's so good to hear that because when we do find our uniqueness and our original design, and we live in and step into it, even when it requires a lot of confrontation and conflict, or inner turmoil, right? A lot of inner turmoil. That's when we really start to live. I don't know if everyone's like this, but whenever I'm stuck being suppressed from what I'm designed and called and gifted to do, I'm miserable. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I said this to someone today is like people don't change unless the pain of where they are is worse than the pain of what it's going to require to get where they're going. And so
So true.
that's been in my life as well as in different ways, obviously, but just overcoming obstacles to stay in my lane, like and fulfill the original design God had for me when he knit me together in my mother's womb to accomplish the good works that he prepared in advance for me to do. That's where I just thrive. And it does, on paper, it doesn't make sense. If it was an equation, it wouldn't add up. But to do it and live it, we always use the phrase "living the dream," but there's nothing in the world like living the dream. And it's not really a dream. Well, it is a dream, but it's not your dream. It's a dream that the Lord put on you, and gave to you, gifted to you in order to steward. And we can either bury the gift, and you don't have to run for governor, and you don't have to, lead a healing and deliverance ministry or fill in the blank. It looks like you. It doesn't look like the person next door. But when you choose to overcome the obstacles and live into it, there's nothing like it ever in life, And my most miserable times in life is when I felt a form of oppression that kept me trying to be the man that other people wanted me to be, as opposed to being, like I just posted on one of my platforms the other day, and I can't quote it, but the scripture that says, if I'm still trying to please man and not trying to please God, then, that's the most miserable place to be. I should look that up instead of trying to just, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
and it's, I think about those disciples, man, those 12 that Jesus called, and he just said, follow me. And it probably would have been so easy to take the safe path and the easy path. But because he was willing to say yes and leave his business and his homeland and his extended family and travel with this wild-eyed preacher, this wild-eyed rabbi, the Lord blessed him and gifted him, watched him and challenged him, and he screwed it up. Like I always say, Jesus had 6 million Jews to choose from. He could have chosen one of the top 72 religious leaders of the Sanhedrin, but he chose fishermen, zealots, and tax collectors. They did not have the qualifications to do what in our eyes, in man's eyes, what Jesus was asking them to do to launch the Church of Jesus Christ, one of the most important, the very thing that split time in half. We measure time on the life of this man, and they got to see it front row, center, real time, 24/7, and that was their reward for saying yes to a really pretty ridiculous request to leave everything and follow me. And so that's it. It's like he's watching me and how I'm stewarding my call. Right, Buckley?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's I think about that a lot too. Why those specific 12 dudes, and I relate myself to Peter all the time because I'm just have all these boneheaded moments. Back to your nature versus nurture thing, I agree with Lauren. I think it's both. I think, God, before you're born, has this plan and is creating you to do these things. But I also think because they're free will, we have to see it and accept it and be all into it. And, that's the hard part. And, I know for me personally, getting into the trafficking and exploitation of children and things like that, like if you'd have asked me, 5 years before I felt God called me to do it, I'd tell you crazy. Like there's no way I'd ever want to do that stuff. And I had colleagues that were like, how do you do this every day? How do you look at this stuff every day? And the only answer I could ever give them is it's a God thing. I don't know. God just takes that trauma away from me. He guards me from it. And it's the most awful thing I can think of a human being can do to another human being. But like you said, when I'm not doing it, when I'm not involved, I'm restless. Things aren't going right in my life. And it seems like the more chaotic my life becomes through doing what God's called me to do, the happier I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can't explain it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that brings us up to this whole, I want to use the word, ready? Gubernatorial. It's a hard word to say. This
Right.
decision, I met with you, I don't know what it was, maybe 8 months ago, 6, 7, 8 months ago. I can't remember when it was, at a coffee shop. And at that point, you were considering different offices, but we didn't talk about the governor race, right? So that happened apparently between then and now. So yeah, what in the world? That's such and especially you're running against a strong candidate, so
Hmm.
what inspired, what changed, or I guess maybe even didn't change your mind, but took you a little deeper down the rabbit hole to bigger sights and bigger visions?
Well, the first thing that I'll say is that when we were sitting together on the front porch of that coffee shop, I was I was really wrestling, and I was in a low season professionally. I had been trying to do anything else that would make more sense with my life. I've got 4 kids, it was I need to be more present at home with them. I applied for all kinds of jobs that sounded like they'd be fun, and nothing was working out. And so looking at getting into public service, I thought, well, we can talk about it. And you asked me a question that day. You said, Lauren, how do you define success? Because I was feeling like I wasn't stewarding the things that the Lord had given me. And the answer that I had came really quickly. I said, success to me is that when people leave my presence, they're better because of it.
Wow.
And being able to say that out loud really helped me reframe whatever professional success I thought I needed to have at 38 years, in my life. And so that reframe really unlocked some things for me. A couple of days after we talked, I had been planning to run for a county office, and the person who said that they were not going to run for that office decided to run again. And we have a lot of the same network, and I didn't want to take people into a nasty downward spiral of, campaigning. I looked at the state legislature, but I'd be the only independent running there. I am actually a true independent. I've never registered with any party, and I've voted across ballots since my early 20s. And so plenty of people will say she's a Republican in disguise, she's a Democrat in disguise, yada, yada. But no one has trained me. Let me say this very clear. If you're listening to this, no party has recruited me to run as an independent. I made this decision on my own. And to your point earlier, I mean, everything looks like it would be stacked against me as a political outsider, as an independent, as a woman, as someone, unseasoned or young. But in reality, those are the most incredible strengths of this campaign. And so when we started to look at the options and I saw who was running, I was looking at the very strong likelihood of someone winning a Republican nomination who had never won even the majority, even close to the majority of the vote. Only 14% of Tennesseans vote in primaries. Only 33% of Tennesseans voted in the last governor's race.
Wow.
And so we have the lowest voter turnout in the country. We're 51st. We would be looking at 14% of the people voting in a primary. About 2/3 of those people would vote for a Republican, and about 2/3 of those people would vote for the winner. And so you would have someone walking into the governor's office as likely the first female governor of this state with 7 to 8% of the popular vote. And that felt unjust to me, and that felt wrong. And so knowing that I had connections in the independent space nationally, I've been working within the national movement for independence for the last 5 years. I had great connections across the state. I'm a rural girl, but I've lived in Memphis. My husband's family is from Appalachia. I've taught in Nashville. I live in suburban areas. I have my finger on the pulse of the state, and I knew that I had national connections behind me as well. And I thought, well, if there's a person who could run this race and give the supermajority a real challenge, I don't know anybody else who could do it more than me. And I, again, wrestled it out with God, and I cried a lot of tears begging for any other path. But from the moment that this became a reality, I have had such a peace that this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And if we win in November, and I should say when we win in November, because everything is looking favorable, then only God gets the glory for that, because truly this is the most unlikely path to a governor's residence. And I feel more in the hands and in the grace and in the mercy of God than I have in the last 7 or 8 years.
One of the things I love that you said, and this is kind of how I run my life as well, is we find the will of God and the plan of God, and not that he wills and plans for you to win necessarily, but he wills and plans for you to say yes to this challenge, one way or the other. And that's what he's really looking for. He's looking for our yes more than he's looking for our victory, Yeah, it's kind of like this. I think to really find the will of God, you have to combine this experience with like this ability that he's given us to kind of come up mentally with a plan, which is kind of what you were sharing with all of these things you were sharing. It's kind of a mental exercise alongside hearing his voice. And you kind of, and even the voice of other people, and you put them together. And then you still say, Lord, this is yours. My hands are wide open. If you want me to do this, I'm here to serve you. If you don't, close every door. This is a really, just a little personal story, but my wife and I, a couple months ago, we put a contract in on a house contingent on our selling, and I felt like this was where we were going to spend the rest of our life. And I felt really at peace and like the Lord was putting his hand of blessing upon it. And then it's been right at 60 days, and it was being contingent on our house selling. Our house hasn't sold. And in the past, like when I was trying to be in control and write my own story, that would have made me really like angry and frustrated. And I would have went out and tried to find 17 ways I could make this happen. But I really put it in the hands of the Lord 2 months ago. And I said, Lord, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen easy, and I want you to be in charge. I don't want to take control, because we live in a credit society, right? There's a million ways to get money. But I'm like, Lord, that's part of why I feel really good about this. I feel the leading of your spirit. I think I do, at least. My friends are approving, they feel good about it. But ultimately, it's still in your hands. And so I'm going to take steps forward. I'm going to write out a contract on this house. I'm going to make it contingent, and I'm going to put a timeline on it. And then I'm going to open my hands up and trust you with it. And again, in the past, by day 55, I would have been fuming and angry and hot. But the Lord has just made me be much more submitted to him over the last couple of years. And feels so much better. Just wide open hands. Lord, this thing belongs to you. And if you want it, you will open every door. But if you don't want it, would you please close every door and keep my hands off of it? And that sounds like kind of the process you went through. Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up on paper. But Lord, if it's your will, I say yes to you, which is amazing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of peace that comes with that when it does get hard, right? And when things don't go like you think they'll go, when things are really challenging and you have to make hard decisions. But we have had to make a lot of difficult decisions early on in this campaign, and I'm really proud of what we've done. And the Lord has preserved so many beautiful relationships attached to the campaign. And I don't know, there's just this deep peace that I have every night when I go to bed, even if I've only slept 2 or 3 hours, that there's just this deep peace that obedience allows. And
yes.
Yeah, I'm really, really grateful for that.
Yes. And that's worth much more than playing it safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Peace has always been a good litmus test for me. If knowing, am I on the path that God wants me to be on? Equate this to your race, and you can tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. But I hear you say peace a lot, and where I equate that in my mind is, God, I'm doing what you've called me to do, which is run for governor. If I win, fantastic. If I lose, fantastic. There's that, like you just said, that peace and just being obedient. Because God doesn't call us to something and at the same time show us the outcome. He just calls us to the starting line. He doesn't necessarily show us the finish line. And so I think just having peace and knowing I'm at the starting line and I'm headed towards the finish line. I don't know what's there, but it doesn't matter because I'm doing what God's called me to do. Do you feel that same like peace?
Yeah, and I think it's a great place to say, I don't think that God really cares who's the governor of Tennessee. I don't know that he's definitely not moving us around like pawns. But I do believe that someone asked me this yesterday, how could you get involved, Lauren, in politics? It just feels so ugly. And I said, who is the government made to serve? And, she said, people. And I said, and what do we believe about people? They're made in the image of God. And what better way for me to serve my God than to serve the image bearers of God that I'm around every day? And whether we win or lose in November, there's this moment where I have been able to use the physical body that I have as the temple of God to be a relief to people who feel such angst in this moment. I've been able to motivate people to move their bodies in a way that feels productive. I have been able to inspire hope in people who feel that no one has listened to them in the political space for years. And those people aren't feeling frustrated because they are wanting their tax dollars to be used better. I mean, that's part of it, but really it's that they want the people around them to have better lives. They want their children to have better education. They want their neighbors to be safer. They want good things for people. And that really is what the government is designed and should be doing. Win or lose in November, I think that the Lord is still very present in allowing people who are drawn to hope, people who are drawn to justice, people who are drawn to community. Creating those spaces for them to find each other is powerful.
I used to get so frustrated when we would rescue a survivor, get them into the safe house, and then 2 days later they run away. I used to get so frustrated at the survivor. I used to get frustrated at God. I got frustrated at myself. What could I have done differently? It just took some time and for God to show me that that's not on you. I just called you to go do this. You know, some of them I can look at now today that even though they ran and even though they rejected being rescued, something happened. Some seed was planted to where now today they're no longer in the industry. And so even though it didn't happen in that moment when I thought it should, it had an impact somewhere down the road. And I can see that not just you, but anybody who's doing what God's called them to do, even though again the outcome's not what you think it should be or might be, but all the people that you had an impact on in between the starting line and the finish line, that could have been God's purpose all along. I think there's great peace in that. But
can I jump on that real fast as a parallel?
Sure,
because I do think that for joining you in that work for 15 years and walking with women and men and children who have such complex traumas, it feels safer to be with your abuser often than it does to be in a new environment that you can't predict. And our brains are designed to protect us through our, what we know to expect, right? And so I watched so many survivors in the same situation to leave this incredible opportunity. We could tell stories all day long about people who walked away, but I have been able to see that exact same thing in the political space. People who have been so conditioned to believe that their party is going to save them. People who have been so conditioned to believe that if they vote outside of their party, then they're going to lose their social network or they're going to be seen as the enemy. We will never find healing in our society as long as we are not creating safe off-ramps for people who do have the courage to walk away, who do have the courage, even if just for this one election cycle, even if just for the name on the top of the ballot, the office at the top of the ballot to take a risk for something that feels safe. We will never be able to heal the system that we have unless people step in and create that safe off-ramp. And it's only going to happen in that center space. And so to my friends on the right who have, and I understand so much of the feeling that has led us to voting for things that really are against the things that we value. And voting for people who really are against the values that we carry. There is a safe place to walk away for this election, at least, and to vote for someone that shares your beliefs.
One of the things I told Kevin that if I could give it a title of a topic that I thought was interesting to talk about was the absence of grace in politics, and that being from campaign to the individuals you were just talking about. They're scared to vote outside of this party or whatever out of fear of judgment. How have you prepared yourself? Because one thing that would scare me to death about running for such a big public office is people digging through my closet, right, and finding all the mistakes I've made and not affording grace for those types of things. How have you prepared yourself in the event that something like that happens?
Well, I have repented for those things, and I know that I'm good with God. And so, there will be people who judge me. And I have said to people, even since launching this race, that I am not going to be for everyone. And I'm going to be too much for some people and not enough for others. I'm going to be too conservative for some and too liberal for others. And that's a space that I've sat in for a long time. But if I can give enough grace to myself to be a person who evolves, if I can be gracious enough with myself to know that, man, who I was 20 years ago is not the person that I am today. And if you can see me giving myself that grace, then you can suddenly give yourself that grace as well. And I fully expect there to be some nasty things that come out or that are said. I mean, nothing wild, but there will be digs that people try to make. And at the end of the day, people all want to receive grace. And so the only way that you can give grace is if you're able to, if you know what it feels like to receive it and you have received it fully. And so, it may come, but I know who I am, and I know who God saved me from, and that's myself. So I'm okay with that.
One of my favorite taglines, and by the way, I don't think we've ever talked politics on this podcast, Glenn, that I can remember. So this is off topic for us, but it's so exciting to talk about how, God and the Holy Spirit wants to engage in this. But one of my favorite taglines that's on your website, I think it's on your front page actually. It says, "Government works best when ideas compete, not politicians." What have you learned? And maybe you've already shared it with us, but maybe there's more. What have you learned about politics since you have been in this public service venture?
Well, that there's a big difference between politicians and public servants. And you can identify a politician pretty quickly because they've taken money from corporate interests and they have already signed away their willingness to think for themselves because they're just there to sign on a line with whatever people have told them to do. And the public servants are the ones who are spending time with people and they are asking questions of what people need. And they are willing to sit and be wrong even for the sake of the discourse, because it sharpens us and it makes us better. There was a major bill that was being heard in committee today in Nashville, and we won't get into the weeds here, but there was a room full of high school students that were very concerned about this bill. And there was another bill that was supposed to be heard around closing primaries in Tennessee. And that committee, with 40 plus bills on the docket on the schedule, spent over 45 minutes discussing a bill that was brought to recognize Judea and Samaria as map locations. And the Tennessee state legislature. And they spent all of that time talking about that in order to defeat all of the people who were there to see the real public discourse over legislation that actually matters. To their, and I say that as a Christian, like I'm not, we are so unserious right now in our leadership that the irony is that when someone speaks with truth and with grace, we're so unused to hearing it that people's ears perk up because they're not expecting to hear that from someone who's running for office. So that's been exciting for me.
I can see you inviting people to come sleep on the couch at the governor's mansion. And
actually on the front page of Pinkston for Tennessee.com, pinkstonfortn.com, there's a button upper right corner, which is where everybody looks. It says call Lauren. You click on it and there's actually her calendar. Looks like maybe you've dedicated Tuesdays to take personal calls, like one-to-one personal calls. Like, that's awesome. That's
if you want to talk to me, you should be able to talk to me and get on the, we have not even bought the voter file of, from Tennessee because the data is pretty much trash. We don't know who the independents are, but we're finding them through people. I spent 4 hours on the phone today, and every person I talked to, I said, who are 2 or 3 people that you think that you've talked to about this campaign that I need to know, or who should I call next? And that's how we're running this thing. So that's been really exciting. I did have some friends who lost power during the ice storm. One of them works for our current governor, and his friend was joking and said, has the governor not invited you to move into the mansion yet? And he said, no, but when Lauren's governor, I know she will. Which is just the ultimate compliment. But I'll tell you what we're going to do I'm going to tell you what we're going to do the first week. If I'm in office, every legislator in Tennessee is going to come to the residence, and we're going to have a big old meal, and everybody better bring their favorite thing that they eat, and they're going to bring their partners and their spouses and their kids, and we're going to sit, and you're going to sit with somebody who's on the opposite aisle from you. And we're going to start to humanize each other, because we cannot write effective legislation together if the only time that we talk is in the halls of a debate circle. We have to start to humanize one another, or we'll never be able to serve the people of the state.
That's so good. There's a book I just adore. It's from the 90s. It's probably 30 years old now. It's called, I can't remember the exact title. I think it's called The Great Good Place. The Great Good Place. And it's a guy, it's a sociologist, and his theory is why America, and again, this is 30 years ago, so it's much worse now than then. But the reason that we're crumbling from the inside out is that we've lost our great good places. And he kind of has 12 different characteristics of a great good place. But it's the way he describes it is we only spend time, particularly with the internet, but even before that, we only spend time with people that believe like us, right? So we leave our house in the morning, which, by the way, has a privacy fence around it. So, I'm just kind of locked into my space. And I've spent the night in the morning with people my family, which are people that believe most like me. And then I hop in my car, I hit my little garage door button, it pops up, I go straight to my office where it's actually the thing you can't talk about are the most important things like religion and politics, right? So it's kind of off limits. And then I drive back home, and then I hit the button, comes down behind my car, I go in my house, and then I go to church on Sunday, and I spend time only with people who believe like me. And he said what America has lost is its local hardware store front porches, where men sit in the rocking chair and have permission to talk about the things that matter. And that's what you're talking about, is let's come
Yes.
together, let's put our hearts and heads together, and let's have real conversations about real things that lead to real solutions, as opposed to like just holding up with those who believe exactly like I believe. And even the internet's worse. Like if I mean, I love, Lauren, you and I are both Substackers, and I love Substack, but I only get on my Substack feed people who only believe like me, and then I only get fed articles and political ads and things like that on my Facebook feed from people that believe like me. So thinking about, and that's the question that I would love to hear some thoughts on at another time probably, but like, how do you make the State House a great good place where people talk about real things, real solutions in real time, as
Yeah.
opposed to trying to protect themselves and their party and their value system?
Well, I can tell you how we're
Let's hear
going to
it.
do it. But, the Robert Putnam was a brilliant author and a doctor of psychology who, I believe, sociology, I'm not sure, but he wrote a powerful book called Bowling Alone that talked about this very thing that you just said. We're not in an era anymore of bowling leagues. The Kiwanis Club. I mean, I'm a Rotarian, but there's not many people my age who are in my Rotary Club. And so those common spaces where we would gather are not there. And even the cul-de-sac, the design of the cul-de-sac was a tragedy to American connectedness. And actually, they are starting to ban them in many states because it has become so dangerous for people in emergencies because ambulances can't get through. And so they've created just such a disconnect. The porches, it's very rare to find a new home with a front porch there. The garages face the road, so this is so real. And I'll tell you, the next generation knows that their mental health breakdown is because of this. And they are doing some radical things to shut their phones down and to look for ways to connect with people in real life. And we are struggling with this as the adults that have raised them to be able to do this. But first thing we're going to do in this campaign is to get people in living rooms together. So we're getting ready to launch over 510 events across the state of Tennessee, where we are bringing people into living rooms, and we're just saying, all you have to do is find 10 to 15 people, bonus points if they're people who you think disagree with you. I'm doing this on college campuses across the state, flipping the room around. They think they're coming to hear a speech from me, but we're flipping the room and putting them in circles, and I'm asking them questions, and that's how we're going to find each other between now and November. You put your phone in a box for an hour and a half, and we talk. And then once, if I'm lucky enough to get to represent the people of Tennessee, we're going to institute a legislative accountability tool out of the governor's office that will actually allow every citizen, through a voter ID will be verified, but you get to speak what you want about different issues. If you're for or against different issues, those reports will be public source data, so you know that your desires are being counted and are being reported on. I send that to all 33 senators, all 99 representatives, and then those legislators are actually assigned a scorecard of how well they have voted in line with their constituents. And this is very easy to do in a time of such good data collection that we can do. But that's what it's going to take to revive public trust in government, because it's at the lowest that it's ever been since the 60s.
Mm.
I think it's a lot of it is, people just don't feel like they're heard
Right.
anymore, and just to feel somebody's actually listened, to what I said, whether they agree with me or not, they at least listened to what I said, considered what I said. My wife and I are complete opposites too. She's the biggest introvert you'll ever meet, and I'm probably the biggest extrovert. And we were in Asheville, North Carolina over the weekend, and we took two Ubers, and I'm like best friends with the two Uber drivers before before the ride's over. One guy was in a Tesla, first time I'd ever been in a Tesla, and before the ride was over, he's showing me how fast it can go from 0 to 60, and he's doing the autopilot. And I mean, we're just cutting up, having a good time, and that's just my personality. I went to dinner with a colleague the other day, and we're total polar opposites when it comes to any political topic. But we were talking, and when he would tell me a point of view that he had that I disagree with, I would say, "Hey, will you explain that to me? Because you're stating a fact. Explain to me why you believe that. Why you think that's factual." And I think for a minute it kind of shocked him, because I think he was just expecting me to argue my point of view to him. But instead I was, "Hey, help me understand why you believe that way." And there was things that he said that I thought, "Hey, man, I get it. I get that. Like, I understand your point of view now." It wasn't just two opposing ideas. It was us getting to know each other, and understanding why each of us believes the way we believe. And I can respect that a whole lot more than I can somebody who just shouts from the rooftop and doesn't give me an explanation.
100%. And I've put 91 policy positions on my website because people needed to know where I stand on issues. I don't have a national party platform to stand on. So that clarity was really important to me. But after people see that, they say, "You know what, Lauren, I actually I don't even need to know all of the things. I just need to be able to trust you."
Yeah.
And that does come through that listening and that feedback loop that's so powerful. And I join you, Glenn. I love winning over an Uber driver, and I leave with more cell phone numbers of my Uber drivers than I care to admit. But and I have had multiple people move into our home that met me on Instagram.
Well, see, I had no idea that I was supposed to ask the Uber driver for their phone number. So the
You can
first
keep
guy in
the
the test,
relationships going.
yeah. So, well, the first guy in the Tesla, I get to the restaurant, and I'm like, "Man, I'm gonna request him for the ride back." And I didn't know until then you can't do that on Uber. But I'm on ChatGPT saying, "Hey, how do I get the same Uber driver I had last time?" And it's telling me like all the workarounds. Well, you can get their cell phone number and call them, and you guys can plan it. From now on, I'm getting cell phone numbers from my Uber drivers.
Listen, it's incredible. I was in DC a couple of weeks ago, and highlight of my week, and I met former governors, I met incredible people. And the highlight of the week was our Afghani American driver, who we just had this amazing conversation with. And I gave him my card, and he called me last week, and he said, "Lauren, I have been reading your website. I am just so excited. I have been calling my Afghani families in Tennessee to tell them that they finally have someone who's going to listen to them, and that they need to get involved." And he said, I just am so excited that, we can do this together." And it was a beautiful moment to say, "Look, I'm a Christian, and my beliefs are not changing, but I can say to my Muslim neighbors, we share so much. We have such shared history in the things that we believe, and our values are so similar in the things that we want for our faith, our families, our children, and so really finding these groups of individuals and bringing them all together in the same room is such a powerful moment of just shared humanity that it knocks people's socks off because they're not used to seeing it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing you don't forget.
Well, I'll tell you, I've got several friends from the LGBTQ community, and they know what I believe, but I make sure they know that. Like, I speak my truth to them and what I believe is God's truth, but that's it. After that, I love them. And I think that's what we're called to do. We're called to speak truth and love people. And it's possible to do both. I think a lot of people, especially in politics, think
Yes.
they don't think you can only speak truth and that's it. You can't speak truth and love. And I think that is deepened so many of my relationships with people from that community, even though our beliefs aren't the same. They know that despite that, I love you anyway. And I think that for me, that's created some of the most powerful relationships that I've ever had.
Absolutely. I share this with Christians a lot who are concerned about my dogged stance on human rights. But I say to people, I'm okay if someone doesn't vote for me because of the stances that I take on issues, but I am not okay if someone doesn't vote for me because of the way I've used my faith to harm them. And that to me is something that I have to answer to God for. And so when we strip people of their dignity and of their human rights, we lose the authority to get to speak into their lives with love. And regardless of what it is, we are all carrying something that is trying to separate us from God. And my path away from God is no more sinful than your path away from God. Like we're all on a different path. And I don't ever want my faith to be used to harm my neighbor because we don't hold the same belief.
Well, let's start to wrap it up and take turn 4 in NASCAR terms. How you like that, Buckley?
I don't watch NASCAR, so I have no idea what you're talking
All
about.
right, cool.
My dad cried when Dale Earnhardt died, so I'm with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, cool. Of all the things we've talked about, and we've talked about a lot in the last hour-ish, what do you most hope if you were blessed with an opportunity to serve the people of Tennessee? What would be your greatest desire of all the things we talked about, or something we haven't talked about?
I want so badly for people to live a vibrant life, to feel free to live out loud as their true selves, and for the practice of governing to be one that dignifies humans and dignifies the process of civil discourse. I don't know how we've gotten so far away from that, but we've allowed it to happen on our watch. And the only way we get it back is by voting in a way that declares that we demand it.
So good. Thank you so much. I probably need to get you back to the campaign trail because you don't have any margin at the moment. So Pinkston, Pinkston, 4FORTN.com, Pinkston4TN.com. You can actually schedule a personal call with Lauren if you wanted to. That's pretty amazing.
That's right.
Yeah,
Open office hours on Tuesdays.
That's awesome. You can find Buckley and me on Facebook on the Kingdom Effect podcast. You can find my stuff on kevinebeasley.com, unless you want to see pregnant pictures underwater at kevinbeasley.com. And thanks for being with us. I'm super excited to just hear people's thoughts about this episode as they listen. It just opened up even for me. It opened up a lot of thoughts and a lot of great things. So I'm proud of you. I've known you for a while. I've seen you consult and launch faith-based nonprofits that help people around the world. I've watched you raise up college students to be more than they could have been had you not been in their life for a season. And now I'm watching you to take some bold steps. So, as a friend, a little bit farther down the road, I just say I'm proud of you for saying yes to Jesus, whatever that means in the coming months. And look forward to seeing what the Lord's got in store. So, Buckley, any last words before we close out?
Just Lauren, thanks for being here today. I'm sure you had no idea what to expect with Kevin and a guy you've never met before. But we appreciate you being on here and being vulnerable and talking about your faith and the campaign and everything. And on a side note, I would love whenever post campaign between now and November, I'd love to sit down and have some conversations and tell some stories from our trafficking perspectives.
Absolutely. And I'll come back anytime and talk about that. I'll share coffee anytime. Thank you guys so much for having me and keep doing good work in the world. You guys shine light everywhere you go, and I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Buckley from the free state of Jackson, Tennessee. I was thinking about that earlier. That you guys do things a little different there in Jackson.
Now don't start hating on West Tennessee now. I'm a West Tennessee girl too.
Have you been to
There he
Jackson yet,
goes.
Lauren?
Oh, so many
Yeah,
times. And I
awesome.
grew
Oh, you
up,
Yeah.
said Memphis, right? Yeah.
well, I grew up in McNairy County. So let it
Yeah.
be known that I'm
Oh,
all the way down
oh,
45. I am in Buford Pusserland and spent many
oh.
years driving through Jackson to get to Bells and Crockett County and Brownsville. So yeah, I know
Awesome.
Jackson well.
Awesome. Blessings, guys. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Kingdom Effect podcast. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, keep saying yes to Jesus.